Hello, denizens of the internet. I'm sure you've heard the bad news. Paramount Television Studios will cease or has already ceased operations at the time you're viewing of this video. Of all the studios I spent time at in Hollywood, Paramount was most special because of the sitcoms produced there and the fact that I interviewed for a VP job. I'll get back to that later. President Nicole Clemens will exit the company and all current series and projects in development at Paramount TV Studios, including Reacher, Apple's Time Bandits, and the upcoming Cross at Prime Video will move under the CBS Studios umbrella. Is this just moving deck chairs around on the Titanic, which also was a Paramount movie? I don't know. Will the famous logo completely disappear? I don't know either. The brand sure ain't what it used to be. Ms. Clemens has been running the joint since 2018, where she gave us the stunning and brave Star Trek Discovery and other lackluster shows. Perhaps there's a connection. Probably, of all the studio entrances in Hollywood, the one that was the most iconic for me was Paramount. Sure, they were all just concrete arches with an overweight security guard asking you who you're meeting or what you were doing there. Essentially no different from a gated condo, but it always gave me a tingle when I passed the test and was allowed to enter a realm that was really just a bunch of giant boxes with massive fenced-in transformers at their ends to manage all the huge amounts of electricity movie and TV shoots required at the time. But to me, it was magical. The giant numbers on the sides of the stages, the long line of honey wagons where you could read the names of the actors working on a TV show. Seeing Michael J. Fox's name on one of the doors, knowing I might be mere feet from getting arrested for accosting a star was exhilarating. I know Honey Wagon also has another meaning. I'm not entirely sure if they are also including Paramount Pictures, famous for such movies as Titanic, Indiana Jones, The Godfather, Grease, Mission Impossible, Top Gun, American Beauty, Star Trek, Fatal Attraction, Beverly Hills Cop, Saturday Night Fever, Forrest Gump, and many, many more. But for me, Paramount was where most of my favorite sitcoms lived. Cheers, Family Ties, Kate and Allie, Mork and Mindy, Laverne and Shirley, Newhart, One Day at a Time, Pee-wee's Playhouse, not a sitcom, but it was one of my favorites. Square Pegs, Taxi, The Jeffersons, WKRP in Cincinnati, Happy Days, MASH, All in the Family. Jesus. When I was head of TV comedy at CBC, I took on the job of trying to make sitcoms work in Canada, concentrating on two things we just couldn't seem to get right: the writing and look. On one particular sortie to La La Land, I was there to watch live tapings of Family Ties, where I actually did get to meet Fox, a lovely person. I was wandering about the lot waiting for the taping to start when I accidentally took a wrong turn and stumbled into the soundstage where Cheers was shot. The set was empty. At the risk of being caught, I went and sat in Norm's chair for a few minutes and luxuriated in the moment. It's sad we've lost that magic. For you Canadians old enough to remember, one of the jokes about Canadian sitcoms was that they looked terrible and just couldn't match what was being produced in the U.S. How did you guys do it? I sought out Canadian expats, such as MASH director Burt Metcalf and Mary Tyler Moore and Taxi producer-writer Stan Daniels. What slouches. They were unbelievably forthcoming with their time, and Burt Metcalf was kind enough to actually come up and direct several episodes of a failed series in opposition. We failed, but we learned how to fail from the best. Remember when I mentioned the huge transformers at the ends of the sound stages? Well, that turned out to be another key element of the advantage Hollywood had over most other jurisdictions at the time. We shot our shows with what were, essentially theater lights. American sitcoms, on the other hand, were shot using an array of mostly 10K lights that used a huge amount of power. These things were large. They didn't adjust the brightness with a switch. Instead, they would layer on something called fiberglass spun, a kind of neutral filter in front of the light. The more they piled on, the less light shone on the scene. But the color temperature of the lights didn't change. That was the secret. If you used a controller that decreased the power or increased the power to the light, that would change the color temperature. The CBC did not have any facility that could provide power to, an array of 10K lights. It also probably couldn't afford the electric bill. With modern cameras, that's no longer an issue. But at the time, I learned why American sitcoms looked the way they did. Sorry if that got all geeky for you, but the quality of a production should be something the viewer doesn't notice. And a lot of work goes into making sure the viewer doesn't notice. We also didn't solve the writing problem, but when CBC suddenly went through a massive cut, 1,200 jobs were lost, and while I wasn't one of the ones on the chopping block, my boss made it clear that there was no budget for me to try things, so I decided to leave. On my final day, the president of English Language TV asked me for my final words to all the assembled department heads, and I said, "Thank you. It's been a great 3 years at the CBC, but it's time for me to return to the creative community." The silence was deafening. Tough crowd. As it happened, I had made many connections in Hollywood, and I was offered an opportunity to interview for a job at Paramount. I flew down, did the interview. It went well. I think it went well. That evening, I was having dinner at the Beverly Hills Hotel's Polo Lounge with an expat Canadian, another one, a producer of reality shows, who was endlessly complaining the entire time that he had made NBC hundreds of millions of dollars, but they were no longer returning his phone calls. Okay. You see, the one thing most everyone in Hollywood has in common is failure. Even if you are successful, that could represent 1 in every 10 attempts. So, for whatever reason, everyone wants to talk about those 9 failures and how stupid everyone was to turning it down or whatever. And if only the show wasn't broadcast against reruns of Golden Girls Christmas special, they would have gotten a 15 share. It was at that moment I decided I wasn't cut out for Hollywood. I took the red eye that night back to Toronto. I never did hear if I'd gotten the job or not, but I think that was for the better. I will miss Paramount TV. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.